And welcome. I'm Greta Keen, a psychoanalyst, and this is Bill Murray, a psychologist. And we are welcoming you to the next step in our 7 steps for using a pause to end a fight.
Good job.
Right. There's been so many titles. It's like conflict, fight. Anyway, but we've had lots of constructive conversations about it. Reviewing the last 2 steps, well, the 3 are: 1, know you're activated; 2, sort of write down the story of like what's happening, sort of, and they tend to be like, you know, he did this and this is what it means and this is why it's so upsetting and blah, blah, blah. It's all the interpretation, just sort of unedited.
Right, the story that's going through your head. You don't have to clean up the story.
No.
You don't have to think, what should I be thinking?
No.
Just listen to that radio station in your head that's broadcasting blame.
Yes.
And interpretation and what this all means.
And since no one's going to read it, it can be X or R rated. You know, because you want to sort of get the true nature of what you're thinking and feeling.
Mm-hmm.
And then the second step is the very, very, very cleaned up version, which is that you're going to talk about the description as if you were a Martian, which is none of the interpretation, no bad language, because Martians wouldn't talk like that. But it's just that this is what happened. He did this, he said this as I remember it. I did this, I said this. These are the gestures I remember. This is what I kind of have as a visual image, as if we were playing a movie. Right.
And so that brings us to the 4th step, which is identify your pain point. So let me put that on here.
Because we know that even though we laugh and we talk and we use a lot of sense of humor that you know sort of feels jocular, that what we're talking about is actually very painful, and that when you're in the thick of it, it can feel very life and death. I mean, and very uncomfortable and intense and painful, and is connected to often a lot of really serious traumas. So we know that using humor is a way of bringing some softness and kindness and compassion to it, and that we're kind of treating ourselves as, yes, that's right, we're humans, just like everyone else. And sometimes we get into situations and acting in ways and feeling ways that we wish that we wouldn't, or that our rational minds thinks we shouldn't. So that's the humor is an invitation to be kind and soft and gentle and sense of humor.
So for this 4th step of identifying your pain points, we're going to use the information you gathered in step 2, which is the story in your head, and the description as if you were a Martian in step 3.
Yes.
And we're going to overlay them. So think of it that way, that sort of one map is the description of what happened. And then if you put the story on top of that and look for those points in the action where the greatest pain arose, that's what we mean by identifying your pain points. And we thought of an example of this as we were kind of processing how the video went yesterday. Greta had a thought.
Yeah, because actually I realized that I'd had a little mini activation in the last session when Bill had said that, you know, he would leave the room, but it was because he actually had heard what I was saying. I was like, oh, and I could feel that connecting to an old place that felt very painful. And I used, you know, so that's one, I identified that was a place of activation, little activation, but activation nonetheless. And that I was able to sort of find out what the story was. And I was able then to describe it and be able to say, oh, this is the moment when I felt it and it happened. And then we were able to talk about it and really get something very useful about what why that had felt painful.
Mhm.
Because it was about feeling like he had, he had not really understood what I was saying, and was leaving, not using a pause, just leaving, which is different. And that there had been times that I thought, well, even if he had understood and he was leaving looking angry, then it was going to ignore it, or, sort of that, tell the story to himself that I was bad for bringing it up.
Mhm.
So that was touched on some
Mhm.
old pain point that we've actually very successfully worked
Mhm.
through in lots of ways.
Yeah. And as we talked about it, I said, "Oh yeah, of course." What I meant in that activated state, I might very well say, "Yeah, I hear you loud and clear." But what
Mhm.
that means is, I hear the story in my own head.
Right.
That the message you're giving me is telling me I'm wrong, I'm not doing it right, I'm being criticized, and that becomes so uncomfortable that I just want to take off.
Right.
So that was an example of a pain point.
Yeah.
Identifying it, being able to talk about the story and describe when it happened, gave us information that helped us process the experience so that we
Mhm.
had a deeper understanding of each other, and it was a good way to connect.
Mhm.
So that really is the heart of step 4. Identifying those moments in the description of what happened when the moments of pain arose, and what are the parts of the story that go along with that pain.
Mhm. Yeah, and by being able to say specifically, not like, yesterday when we were arguing, you were just disrespecting me, right? That being able to say these words or these gestures, that's why the description is useful to overlay with the story. That moment, that was really where I just kind of felt it.
Because I interpreted it this way.
Yeah.
Right. When
Right.
this happened, this is how I took it to mean. And when I had that interpretation, this is the kind of pain that came up for me.
Right. It's going to give the
I
other
felt
person.
disappointed. I felt hurt. I felt scared. I felt angry.
Yeah. And that's going to give the other person a whole lot more information to be able to really work with, rather than just sort of a general kind of, that was very upsetting, or this is what it means.
Right. And this is a good place for one of our maxims, which is take out of your vocabulary the phrase "you make me feel."
Right.
Because remember yesterday we talked about action, interpretation, reaction, that it's the interpretation of the action that causes the reaction. So it's the interpretation that makes you feel however you feel.
Right.
You may want to let that sink in, or write us a comment.
Right.
So what we'd like to do, here's what we're going to do tomorrow. Just hold on. We're going to take the pain points that we talked about today and look for associations to them. So what we would love to invite you to do is to visit our website. If you have some comments about today, you can put them in the Facebook, our Facebook page, or visit us at Mind Your Weather, where you can sign up for our newsletter or read our blog. And we'd love to encourage a dialogue with all of you who are listening.
And at the end of these 7 days, we are going to have an opt-in, a landing page where they'll be able to sign up and get our PDF.
A free gift.
A free gift, right. There's all these words.
It's going to be a PDF that has all the steps we're talking about with fillable forms, so that you can actually use it during an activation, during a pause,
right,
to help you process what's been going on.
With Bill's very cool illustrations. Yes.
Okay, so we'll look forward to talking with you tomorrow at 2:30 with step number 5, and we look forward to doing it.
Yep, and you will be transformed.